Okay, welcome back. Where's my remote? So this session is about budgeting. Thank you to everyone who came out. I recognize a lot of you. I think a lot of you were at Mr. Murphy's and my session with credit cards as well. So this is just continuing on some of the life skills. Just a program that Mr. Murphy and I are kind of developing on our own and presenting to students. So this will give you some ideas about how to budget your money for those of you who are making money. So before I even continue, how many of you earn an income? Okay. Or have a job? How many of you get maybe money as well as an allowance or a gift, whatever? Okay. So budgeting is going to be pretty useful for you. It's a very useful skill for once you start earning money, once you start getting money regularly. It's going to help you to create some discipline in terms of where you spend your money, but it will also help you to understand where your money is going, how much of it gets spent, and it'll help you to build some goals to, whatever financial goals you have, it'll help you to achieve them. So budgeting is a key part of money management and leading yourself to a life of financial freedom. Financial freedom can be described as a number of things. For some people it's having a certain amount of money. For other people it's not having the stress of, you don't have enough money. For some people, financial freedom is, being able to spend their time the way they want, right? Because they've, been disciplined with their money. Budgeting can look very different for many people, and it can look very different over the course of your life. So I'll give you a couple different philosophies Mr. Murphy and I worked on, and things that I've practiced myself that have worked for me as well. If at any point you get to have a question, feel free, just raise your hand and feel free to ask. So some of the philosophies here, I focused on three main ones. So the first one is a philosophy around setting limits on what you spend. So that would include building some categories for how you spend your money, and then staying within those limits. Okay. Another option here, option B, is recording your expenses and understanding where your money goes. So option B is something that I do now. I track all of my expenses. When I go buy something, I keep the receipt and then I add it into an Excel sheet later on, so I understand where my money is being spent, how much of it's being spent, and how much I have left over every month. Option C is a philosophy I gave to a friend of mine. So prioritizing the things that you value and focusing money there, right? So for my friend, she really enjoyed, going out to eat with friends, and so knowing that that's one of her values, to prioritize money being spent there rather than spending money, just on Uber Eats, which is one of her expenses. All of these systems require a degree of discipline, but it's either, your money or your life, right? So if you're very open-handed with your money, not managing where it's going, not mindful of where you spend your money, you're likely just not going to have a lot of money to spend, and maybe you'll be living paycheck to paycheck, which hopefully with some of the skills that me and Mr. Murphy are trying to give to students, hopefully you can avoid that, right? It's quite stressful. Okay, so philosophy A. So philosophy A, just a little background story on this. Philosophy A is about setting limits and staying within them. So when I was a broke university student, which was not that many years ago, because I wasn't earning a lot of money and didn't have a lot of extra cash on hand, I set limitations on things, different categories of spending. So for example, eating out, I told myself, well, you can't spend more than $40 a week. Okay, so that would be $160 a month. After a couple months, I had to make some adjustments. I had to reduce that number as well. But setting that limit for how much money I'm allowed to spend eating out per week, per month, made sure that every time I made an expense, I asked myself, do I really want to make this expense, or should I save this for later? Okay, maybe I went out to have dinner with some friends and it cost me 20, 30 bucks, 40 bucks, whatever it is. I understood that that is, a certain percentage of my limit for that week, and that I had to maybe go easy on that spending, right? So that was the example given. I also had another category, just other, sometimes random expenses come up. When I was in university and kind of 2 years after university, I was still buying a lot of books as well to continue educating myself. So I limit myself to about $100 a month, $150 a month on just random expenses that would come up, right? And as you get older, you'll have more responsibility, you'll have more complications in your life. So maybe you have to spend some money getting an oil change on a car, or replacing something, or buying something for the house, right? And so setting up different types of categories for where your spending is, and the things you spend the most money on, and I'll explain more of that in the next set, philosophy, which is what I'm doing. So with this philosophy, it's good to keep in mind that if you don't have money, you shouldn't be spending money, right? So this is a picture of Dave Ramsey here, who gives a lot of financial advice on YouTube, and that's one of the quotes I like of his, that if you're broke, you shouldn't be spending money. And so having strict limitations, and just watch out for the camera, just go behind. So having limitations on what you spend and where you spend it is going to ensure that you have some financial discipline and you're not spending your money carelessly, right? Which is kind of the main cause of why people are often struggling with their money, particularly if they're earning a decent income. Philosophy B, so this is still A. So within A, it can vary depending on your needs. As I mentioned, for me, philosophy A really worked well when I was in university because I didn't have other expenses like I do now. So now as an adult, I live in Edmonton, I work in Leduc, so I have an expense set out for how much money I pay for gas, right? My car has certain expenses. I have to get oil changes done every month or two, right? I did an oil change just like a week and a half ago. It cost me around $80. So I have a category of expenses where I track fuel expenses, right? I live on my own now as well, or I live away from my parents, so I have to buy my own groceries and cook my own food, right? I have to manage all of that myself. And so I have different categories, but philosophy A worked really well for me when I was in university and I was living with my parents, and I didn't have nearly as many expenses because I was taking a bus to school. A lot of the food was just bought and provided by my family, and so it was basically just limiting my extracurricular expenses, right? So expenses on eating out. Back then and now, I still have I pay for my own jiu-jitsu membership, so I had that expense as well. But I simply just didn't have the funds to go beyond my limits, and having that limit every time I went to make a purchase, I thought to myself, is this expense worth adding into my budget? For some people, making these adjustments might be too challenging, but again, you want to learn to be disciplined with your money and be aware of where your money is going as you start earning more money and spending more money as well, right? The last thing you want is, you work for a year and you look at your bank account and there's not much in there, and you ask yourself, like, where did all my money go? Like, I had 2 paychecks a month, maybe $300, $400, $500 a month, depending on what kind of job you're working, or a few $1,000s a month when you're an adult. You want to be able to know where that money is going and where it's being spent. And are you putting some of it aside for your financial goals, whatever they happen to be? Okay. You don't want to end up like this guy with an empty wallet. Okay? You don't want to be broke. Okay? So you want to track your expenses. So philosophy B is a little bit different. For this one, those are my categories down there actually at the bottom. I have to have expenses every month for my grocery bill, for gas or anything related to my car, like oil changes, maybe getting windshield wipers, whatever it is. I track all my expenses there. For fun, right? So sometimes I'll go out, well, I don't really go out to the movies anymore, so I don't do that. That was mostly what I did for fun. But if I go to an event or whatever, I'll track that expense. Eating out as well. So how I operate in philosophy B is that I just keep my receipts, and then I track things under the category. And so right now, for example, I know that within 7 days of December, I've already spent $50 eating out. And so I need to slow down my expenses on eating out. And so if friends ask, I'll maybe provide an alternative option, or I'll just say no, because it impacts my financial goals and how I'm trying to spend money. And whatever your expenses are in life, right? And keep in mind, one thing I will differentiate here is all of these expenses, obviously groceries and gas expenses, I have to spend every month, and they'll fluctuate. But my budgeting is done after I've already set aside money for my mandatory expenses. Like, I gotta pay rent, I gotta pay insurance, I gotta pay my phone bill, I gotta pay my jiu-jitsu membership. There's a couple other expenses I have. I'm already aware of how much of my money every single month goes to my mandatory expenses, right? Like, what do you think is going to happen if you don't pay your rent payment? You're going to get kicked out of your house, right? And you don't want that to happen because it's pretty bad out there. It's not as miserable as it could be, but you don't want to be, a bad tenant, not paying your rent, whatever it is. You want to make sure you already know what your mandatory expenses are. Once I've done that, I know how much money I have to spend that's available for me for my main categories of expenses, and then a certain amount of money I try to save every month. Okay. And I was able to do this because I've developed a degree of competency around managing my money, and that came from being disciplined and putting awareness and attention to where my money was going, which is going to be very necessary. If you want to get good with your money, you have to pay attention to it, right? I mean, think about it this way: as students, if you're not paying attention in class, what happens to your marks?
They drop.
They drop, right? They go downhill. So if you're not paying attention to where you're spending your money, where your money is going, do you think you're going to have a lot of money? Probably not, right? You're not going to understand where it's going either, where it's being spent. So once you've started developing some knowledge, some awareness around your money spending habits, you can try different strategies that work for you, whether it's setting limitations or tracking your expenses. Okay. Part of why this philosophy works for me up here is because I know that I'm making enough money every single month to get by. I have all my bills covered, and I know that I have money to spend on extra things. I already know that mentally, but I was working here last year as well, making very similar amounts of money, but I didn't save a whole lot of money because I wasn't tracking my expenses. So I didn't know where my money was going each month, right? Whereas starting since August, I've changed that. So now I'm tracking my expenses, and I'm trying to pursue a particular financial goal right now. And that helps me to be disciplined around my money, because if I don't reach that goal, how does it feel, kids, when you don't meet some of the goals you set? Does it feel good or bad? It feels bad, right? So this particular philosophy helps me to manage my money better and to save more money and to understand where all my money is going. And that's going to be a very useful skill for you as you move forward, as you start to make money and maybe want to live a better lifestyle. Here's just some examples of how budgeting could look like. I wasn't able to get a photo of or a screenshot of my Excel sheet that I use, but yeah, a lot of people will have their bills to be paid, due date, maybe the amount. They'll have their income listed somewhere, how much money they're bringing into their bank account every single month, and then they'll track and manage their expenses. You can also use various apps on your phone that will track your expenses. They'll connect right to your bank account, and so this app can track your data for you, but personally it's not something I'm comfortable with, so I just track it manually, right? I just take my receipts every evening. If I spent money, I open up my budget and I add that expense into my budget. Okay. But yeah, you're gonna look like that little monkey managing your budget with a lot of cash. Okay. Once you start understanding how much you're spending, how much you're saving. Here's also a breakdown as well. Some people say that 50% of your income should go to your needs. Kind of a just rough guideline, max 50%. You might want to spend 30% on yourself, your wants, things you want to do. And so part of the discipline required with budgeting is that it might take you 2 or 3 months to save up enough money for a particular expense. Maybe it'll take you 6 to 12 months. Or 3 to 5 years, depending on what that expense is, right? Like saving up for a home can take a long time for some people, right? But if you don't track your money, if you don't have any goals, if you don't know where you're spending your money, it's going to be very hard for you to reach those goals. Even people who make well over $100,000, $200,000 a year, many of them still manage to be broke because they have no understanding of where their expenses, what their expenses are and where their money is going. And so if you're ever in a situation where you're making a lot of money, and hopefully you get there, whatever your financial goals are, you don't want to operate on the assumption that, oh, I'm making 6 figures, so I'll just have enough money, right? What tends to happen is called lifestyle creep. People start spending more money than they have, right? Spending more money than they need to be spending, and despite making $100,000 plus a year, at the end of the month, they're still looking around their couch for change to get by. So you don't want to be that person. Okay, and then you should also have some sort of percentage number for how much money you want to save every month. Right? Saving some money is better than no money, right? Some people will tell you, well, if you're only saving $100 a month, that's nothing. It's not nothing. $100 is not nothing, right? Zero is nothing, right? Maybe when you're older and you're making more money, you can save $500 a month, $200 a month, $1,000 a month, right? Whatever it is. But you should have some sort of guideline determining how your expenses are and understand the breakdown of those as well. So philosophy C is kind of a incorporation of both A and B. So you still want to track your expenses, but maybe you want to prioritize certain things and say, hey, you know what? I don't really care how much money I spend to go eat out with friends because that's something I value, right? Or maybe you really like outdoor sports. So you say, hey, you know, I value outdoor sports. I don't value getting takeout food. So I'm not going to spend any money on takeout food, on fast food. But I'm going to give myself more freedom to spend money on those outdoor sports. So I don't know, maybe you get snowboard, skis, whatever, helmet, goggle, things you need to partake in that activity. But in philosophy C, you sort of figure out what your priorities are, right? What do you actually enjoy? What brings you joy in life? And then you allow yourself to spend a bit more money there. You still want to track, right? Like if you're making $2,000 a month and you're spending $3,000 a month, you know, you're not budgeting. You're going into the red every single month, and that's not going to help you long term, right? So you still want to track where your money is, but philosophy C is for, you know, people who might want to be a little more casual about how they spend their money, and so you still want to have good parameters set, good rules set for what money you spend, mandatory, so you don't even touch that money. It just goes to your bills. What money you save, and then within the money you allow yourself to spend on your wants. Prioritize the things you actually enjoy, right? Oh no, kids, it's glitching. Okay. Next up is just having money goals as well, right? So allowing yourself to focus on a target means that you might actually hit a target, right? So if you're aiming at a particular thing, you're more likely to reach that thing that you're aiming for, as opposed to not having a goal at all, right? So for some people, like one of the main goals that a lot of financial advice people will suggest is make sure you have, you know, maybe 6 months of your bills saved up. So if every month it costs you, you know, $800 in bills, make sure you have, what's 8 times 6, kids? Anyone? 8 times 5 is 40, 48. Okay, 48. So $4,800, right? You have 6 months of expenses saved up. So just in case you don't have a job, you're not earning any money, you're not stressed. And having that emergency fund, that's what that's called. That could be a goal. That helps people, that helps reduce a lot of stress, right? You're not immediately worried about money or immediately worried about losing your job and what will happen, right? So that could be a financial goal. Could be 4 to 8 months. You could put away money for an investment. So maybe you want to buy a house. Maybe you want to put some money into the stock market. Maybe you want to buy, maybe you want to get some more education to increase how much money you can make per month or improve your quality of life. Maybe you want to save for a vacation, right? Having some of these goals will help you to focus and be disciplined with your money, right? Because you want something at the end. If there's no goal, if you're just like, well, I'll just earn money, I have money to spend, you'll always kind of just be breaking even, right? So having a goal will help you to be a little bit more disciplined and actually save some of your money so that you have money later on. Okay. So a good takeaway here is continue learning about the importance of finances. Just making sure I didn't skip any slides here. I think this PowerPoint's going to get nuked. Okay, so just learning about the importance of finances, right? If you choose to remain blind to financial education, you're always going to struggle with money, right? So a lot of kids came to the credit card session and they learned some valuable things that they didn't know. There were some really good, genuine questions that the students asked. And as adults, as teachers, it was very clear to us, like, wow, like kids really have no idea what a credit card is. When I got my first credit card, I had no idea either, right? I just knew that, hey, I can use this thing to make purchases. And in the situation I was in at that time, I kind of needed a credit card. Whereas now my mindset on credit cards is like, hey, you know, I need to be very careful with how I use this thing because it promotes consumerism, it promotes spending money. It tends to promote spending money you don't have, right? And so educating yourself on finances is very important. Educate yourself on the concept of financial freedom. What does that mean to you? Is that something you want, right? And you don't need to be a millionaire to have financial freedom. You know, you can work a regular job and have financial freedom and experience less financial stress. You know, put that knowledge to work as well. So it's great if you're reading a book on financial education or watching YouTube videos and educating yourself, but you also want to take action, right? So knowing how to make a budget makes no difference if you don't actually take action and put a budget down and properly manage your money. Okay. You got to be disciplined as well. You know, you can't be carefree if you have goals. You have to be disciplined and work towards them. So set a goal and then work towards it, and then see what new goal you come up with. Okay. And maybe this could be you one day. Dancing with money. Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? You had your hand up earlier.
Oh yeah. For budgeting, would it be better to use a credit card or a debit?
Well, budgeting is based around the money you actually earn, right? So let's say every month you earn $1,500. So you want to base your expenses off the money you make every month. Because a credit card is just debt, right? That's the bank's money.
So that means it would be better to learn budgeting with a debit, not credit.
I guess in a technical sense, maybe, but maybe we'll do the credit card session again. We'll answer more questions for that. But with budgeting, you want to deal with the money that you're earning every month, right? Whatever that happens to be. It could be $200, could be $600, could be $5,000, could be $2,000, whatever it is. You want to take the money you earn every month and then go from there. See how much you have to spend on your mandatory expenses and then how much money you have available for yourself for the rest of the month. Okay. Do you have a question, Price?
I'm stretching.
Okay. Anyone else? Question? Okay. We'll wrap this up. Thank you.